What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. Today is January 25th, 2022, and this past weekend there was a ton of amazing games in the NFL playoffs in the divisional round. Each game was a one-possession game, and every single game, the winner was announced on the final play of the game. Three of the four teams were road opponents getting the upset victory on the road. There were some great games this week. We're going to talk about the Bengals advancing to the AFC Championship game for the first time in over 30 years. What's next for Tom Brady's future after the Buccaneers surprisingly lose to the LA Rams? The Chiefs and Bills overtime thriller that I would say most people would agree would be the game of the year so far. And also the Green Bay Packers shocking loss against the San Francisco 49ers, ending the Packers season and really, questioning what could be the future with, current Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers. In today's episode, I'm joined by Tony Gazza. He's a big Packers fan. We're going to be talking about his reactions towards the Packers, game and Aaron Rodgers' future. So, how you doing today, Tony?
I'm doing good, Jordan. Always a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for having me on. How you doing?
I'm doing really, really good. We have, absolutely a ton of stuff to talk about. And speaking of the Packers, we'll just go ahead and get right into it. Obviously, Green Bay lost 13-10 against San Francisco on Saturday night in the divisional round. So, Tony, what were your kind of reactions towards the Packers' shocking loss?
I was gutted. I think everyone in Packer Nation was gutted. It was heartbreaking to see Aaron Rodgers lose. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times to the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs. And ever since he has said that statement that not as sorry as the 49ers that they didn't draft me, he ultimately has come up short against the 49ers. And once again, that is the case. And unfortunately, the Packers are one and done. I mean, we had home field advantage. This is what we were calling for when we lost to the 49ers in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago. We said only if we had home field, 20-degree weather, can't beat us in Lambeau. And then we got that wish granted. And then what did we do? We blew it. So, I'm just heartbroken. I'm still not over it. Like, I'm still in a mood. I'm sure everyone in Packer Nation is. The Packers haven't even posted on Instagram. That's why I know, like, Packer Nation is just shot through the heart. But on paper, Aaron Rodgers didn't have a bad game. We were talking about this pre-show. 225 passing yards, 91.9 passer rating. So when you look at the stats, he didn't necessarily have a terrible game, right? But we talked about it. When the going gets tough, right, he didn't produce. Those last 3 to 4 throws in that last drive looked like he was on happy feet. He knew it was creeping in. He was like that feeling of anxiousness and, oh my God, here we go again. And ultimately it bit us in the ass because, Jimmy Garoppolo it seemed like for the first half couldn't complete a pass. And Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were like, this is incredible. And now Jimmy G finishes the game 131 passing yards, 0 touchdowns and 1 pick. Aaron Rodgers had a better game than him, but we couldn't get it done. There's factors into this game. Mercedes Lewis fumbled. That turned the momentum in the game. Ultimately, when he fumbled, I was like, here we go. And then Mason Crosby misses a field goal. Here we go again. And then block punt. Oh my God, return for a touchdown. I couldn't believe it. And then all of a sudden, Robbie Gould's out on the field ready to kick the game winner. It just felt like this always happens. I'll just go back and I'll name a few games. One that really, really stung was when we were in an NFC Championship game, Seattle, 2014. And we botched the onside kick. Brandon Bostic, God knows why he went for it. Jordy Nelson was the hands guy on that. and blew it. And then ultimately we lose, right? We talk about the Atlanta game. We talk about the 49er game. We talk about the Buccaneers game. Even against the Cardinals, 2016. We cannot catch a break. And I don't know if it's Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if it's the defense. I don't know if it's the special teams. It might be the entire team. We might be a fluke. And I'm sorry to say this, but I think that was Aaron Rodgers' last game as a Green Bay Packer. I have a doubt he won't come back. We were talking about him leaving the Packers after an NFC Championship game. Why is he going to stay after a divisional round loss? That makes no sense. I mean, this guy is probably just disgusted. He's probably done. And my goodness, I don't know his playoff record off the top of my head, but it's not good, I'll tell you that.
Looking at Rodgers' playoff record, I believe I looked at it just the other day. I think it's 11-10. Tom Brady has triple the amount of playoff wins as Rodgers. And I know Brady's had far more weapons than Rodgers, but at the same time, there has to be a certain point where Rodgers has to stop James Harden in the postseason. I mean, you look at the stats like you mentioned, and the stats aren't bad. But when you watch the game, I mean, it is just some of the throws he had, they weren't interceptions. It'll go as an incompletion on a stat sheet. But you look at it, I mean, there were some times, several interceptions that we talked about before the show. I mean, you already kind of mentioned that last drive was horrendous. His last two passing attempts as a Green Bay Packer, 100%, both of those throws should have been interceptions. And you look at that one where he threw deep to Devontae Adams. If Devontae Adams does not die for that, obviously he missed it. There's a much higher chance that ball could have been intercepted. And, that fumble by Lewis was a completely momentum shifter in that game. And the crazy part is the Packers defense, you could not possibly expect more from them. They played absolutely phenomenal. And we're talking about a 49ers team who's led by Jimmy Garoppolo, who at halftime was horrendous, and he was horrible. And there were some 49ers fans calling for Trey Lance to play because they needed a spark on their team to try to win the game for Green Bay. Obviously, the biggest game of the year, Green Bay, Lambeau Field is a very difficult place to play. They don't need, Trey Lance to come in that game because they somehow end up winning despite the bad play of Jimmy Garoppolo because Aaron Rodgers, I mean, it's just crazy to me. And I know oftentimes, people blame quarterbacks when a team loses, and then, that's, I guess, the fun thing to do, some would say. But when you look at these elite quarterbacks, at the same time, when we've seen them do it before in the past, there's an expectation that they should do it again. When you look at Aaron Rodgers, he's thrown 2 interceptions his last 16 games. He was the MVP favorite heading into the postseason. And then just in the playoffs, I mean, looking at the stat sheet, it wasn't horrible, but actually watching the game, it looked like he was lost at there at times and didn't even know what he was doing. I mean, he should have thrown several interceptions, did not throw a touchdown. Travis Kelce has more passing touchdowns this season, in the postseason, than Aaron Rodgers. That is something nobody thought they'd ever say. And something else I don't think many people thought they'd say is that the Green Bay Packers are not even in the NFC Championship game. I cannot believe it. I know lots of people want Aaron Rodgers back. I get that because, he's the heart and soul of your team. And if you lose him, you're going to be not nearly as good. But I think partially a decent amount of the blame needs to go in Rodgers as well. Because, I mean, he can play great in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, he just looks lost and doesn't know what he's doing. He's the James Harden of the NFL when it comes to the playoffs. I just still cannot believe it. And then now, I mean, the possibility, it's looking like it. I mean, this could very well be Rodgers' last game in Green Bay. It is just absolutely insane to possibly leave it on such a bad note. So you kind of mentioned, think Rodgers will be back with Green Bay. If you had to pick a team right now for Rodgers, if it's not Green Bay, where do you think Rodgers could possibly end up going to?
It's weird to say. I don't see him going to any other team than Green Bay, but it's like I think he might just say, I'm done. Like sometimes you just like mentally and physically throw in the towel, and Brady might be on the brink of that as well, and we'll cover that later. But I think Aaron Rodgers is looking at his life just in general, and just all the flack he caught this season for also, not producing the postseason, but for his vaccination status too. And he might just want to go MIA at this point. Like, seriously, he's that kind of guy where he's so intellectual, he just wants to escape. Like, him and his soon-to-be wife, Shailene Woodley, I guarantee you, they're already on a vacation. They're in the Bahamas somewhere. He's sipping on gin and juice. He's out of sight. I guarantee it. Out of mind, out of sight. I don't know. We don't know. Are the Packers going to franchise tag Davante Adams? We got to wait and see what happens, I think Aaron Rodgers is really waiting to see who comes back. Is it even worth coming back if you don't get Randall Cobb back, you don't get Davante Adams back, you don't get certain guys you want on that roster, and I'm sure David Bakhtiari and guys that are close to Aaron are having these conversations behind closed doors. It's one of those things I was sure that he wasn't even going to come back for this season. We were talking about it. We were shocked he was even coming back, And for him to say now he's going to wait until, before free agency, he's going to sit back and, see. I don't know. I'm anxious. And we got to remember, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are friends in real life. What if they get together and they talk? What if they're friends with Drew Brees? What if they get with Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, one of these, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, one of these guys who have retired, right? Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady sit down with these guys and say, hey, how's your retirement? They talk like Tony Romo. I'll throw him in there too. Maybe they want to follow Drew Brees and Tony Romo into the broadcasting. I don't know. But what I will say is they will have these conversations because they're intellectual guys. And I guarantee you that retirement is on their mind, believe it or not. Because we have guys half their ages retired. Look at Andrew Luck. Look at Robert Griffin III. These guys have been retired. And Aaron Rodgers came in the league a decade before those guys.
And you mentioned, guys who are much younger retiring. Look at Megatron. Megatron has already retired and is in the Hall of Fame, and he's younger than Rodgers. That is absolutely mind-boggling, and it's crazy to think about. And it's interesting because when you think about Rodgers, the possibility of him not playing for the Packers, it's one of those things like, well, it's a possibility of happening, but it doesn't really sink in until it actually does. It's just crazy. It could happen, but the realization of it until it actually happens is one of those, we'll believe it when it happens type of deal. I think there should be a chance of possibly him retiring. And we talked about before the playoffs started, if the Packers win the Super Bowl this season, we both felt like it was a very, very strong possibility Rodgers would just go ahead and retire because, you leave on a high note. You don't want to ruin your legacy by continuing to play after you just won a Super Bowl. But with Rodgers, you think about, some of the teams who could be in contention for, Rodgers. There's the Colts, there's the Steelers, there might be a couple other teams. But when you look at these teams, the Colts, they have a nice roster. You put Rodgers on them, they would have a great team. One of the favorites to in the AFC to compete in the Super Bowl. If you put Rodgers on the Steelers, that is a terrific team. But when you look at this, I'm just saying an example. Like you look at the Steelers team, they won 9 games with Roethlisberger having the worst season of his career. Imagine how good they could do with Rodgers, who was the MVP candidate this year and just won it last year. But at the same time, look at some of those teams in his division. They're not easy. If the Browns get a quarterback, they're a Super Bowl contender. The Ravens are overrated, and I'm always going to say that, but they're still a good team. Look at what the Bengals are doing. Just a young team. So, even if he went to a team like the Steelers, it's going to be a much harder task than some people think. But also, you look at the possibility, let's say he goes to a team kind of like, how Tom Brady went to the Buccaneers. He shocks the NFL and actually leaves the team that he was drafted by. He played there for over a decade and a half, and he leaves to go play for another team. What if he doesn't win a Super Bowl? Like, what if he goes to the Colts, the Steelers, and doesn't win a Super Bowl? To me, I think that's going to tarnish his legacy a ton, because the possibility of him leaving Green Bay and going to a place that he thinks he can win a Super Bowl when he only won one Super Bowl his whole time so far with Green Bay, and if you don't win a championship, what other team you go to me, that's very, that's not good at all, and I think that would hurt his legacy. But we've seen Brady, he won it the first season with Tampa Bay. I know he had so many weapons, but I feel like, in a way, retirement, it won't hurt your legacy as much if you just go ahead and retire, because if he stays with Green Bay, the odds of him going to the Super Bowl with Green Bay now are very slim compared to what was this season. This was their year to win a Super Bowl, and if he goes to a team and doesn't win a Super Bowl, that's to me, I think that would hurt him a lot. But if he just retired now, I mean, we talked about in the season and in his career on a high note. Obviously, he's not ending on a high note, but if you just go ahead and end your career now, I mean, I guess I don't know. I think it could be the smarter option, because if you continue to play, I think there's more cons than pros. But I think retiring for Aaron Rodgers should be a discussion that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about, if he continues to play, it has a negative impact on his legacy. And I agree with that. You look at certain guys that, should have retired. Let's go back. Let's look at Brett Favre, right? Went to the Vikings. Well, first he got traded to the Jets, but went to the Vikings. That was a choice. And had success. Went to the championship game against the Saints, Bounty Gate, all that. But, when we think of Brett Favre, we don't think about the Vikings. We think about him in Green Bay. We don't even think about him in Atlanta when he was drafted. We think about him as a Green Bay Packer. When you look at Michael Jordan, you don't think of him as a Washington Wizard. You think of him as a Chicago Bull. Let's go. Keep going. When you think about when you think about LeBron, a lot of people, they don't think of him as like a Heat or a Laker. They think of him as a Cavalier, right? So there's these guys that they're always going to be associated with the team, because like the face, like the recognition, right? The comfortability. So, I mean, for Aaron Rodgers to go to a different team, that comfortability is going to be gone, and it's not going to be the same. We're used to him in the Green Bay Packer, old style helmet, single cloth chin strap. Like, that is classic Green Bay. That is OG. And I just can't wake up and imagine him in a different uniform. Like, it was really weird to see Tom Brady in a different uniform. Now it's normal, but wow, not to see him in a New England uniform was trippy. And same with Peyton Manning. Like, okay, I think for him, Peyton Manning, that was a completely different situation than any other. The neck injury and being basically forced out by the Colts, right? And then you had the Miami Dolphins in contention. I thought Miami was going to get Peyton Manning. I really did. And then Denver got him because of John Elway. So the only other place I can really think of Aaron Rodgers going is Denver, because of Elway and because of Peyton Manning going there, riding off in the sunset, and because they're known for spending in free agency. So, I mean, yeah, I don't see it happening, but that's the only other scenario I could wrap my brain around, because anything else, no way. Because it's either he comes back to the Packers and tries one more time, like literally, because then you could franchise tag Devontae for one more year. You get one more year with Rodgers, one more year with Jordan Love behind him, right? Or he just retires. Or maybe he has a conversation, like I said, with a retired quarterback. He's been on Peyton Manning's show. He's friends with these guys. So I don't know what conversations are being had, but I guarantee you they are being had, and it's going to have an impact on what happens. But, man, I'm with you. So I don't know if you want to shift gears to the Bengals and Titans. That was a great game.
Yeah, it was a great, game. Cincinnati event to the AFC Championship game, and one thing you kind of mentioned about the Broncos. I have mentioned the Broncos several times with Rodgers. That was heading into the 2021 regular season. This was shortly after all the discussion with Aaron Rodgers and the possibility of him not playing for the Packers. This was when it was basically announced on draft day that Rodgers might not want to play for the Packers this upcoming year. And to me, I think the Broncos would be a perfect destination for Rodgers. But Rodgers did say recently in an interview, after the playoff game, he does not want to be part of a rebuild. And to me, that's part of a reason why I did not include, Denver, because you look at Denver, they're still searching for a head coach. If Denver had a head coach right now and they were very comfortable with him and he's done a good job, then I think the possibility of Rodgers going to Denver would be much more likely. But to me, if Rodgers would end up going to Denver, holy crap. I've been super high on Denver for the past couple of years. So they can just find a quarterback, I think they could be really good. And if you find a guy like Aaron Rodgers, I'll go ahead and mark this down, January 25th, 2022. If Aaron Rodgers plays for the Denver Broncos in the 2022 season, the Broncos will be in the Super Bowl. I know I sound crazy, but the Broncos have some of the most young, underrated talent in the NFL. I mean, the Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon's a really nice running back. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Tyree Cleveland, Noah Fant. They have some really nice defenders as well, like Simmons and some of these other guys. They have some nice corners like, Patrick Surtain and a couple other ones. They have such a great young nucleus of talent, but they just cannot be able to find their quarterback. And if you get a guy like Aaron Rodgers who, despite, this season, not looking good for him and, having a very disappointing outcome to end the season, he was still an MVP candidate for pretty much the whole year. And we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, who's still, the reigning MVP because he won it last year. You have Rodgers as the Broncos. I really think they're a Super Bowl contender, and I think they would be in the Super Bowl early as next season if Rodgers will play for Denver. Realistically, though, I just don't know if that's what happened because, like I said, we've already heard him say he does not want to be a part of a rebuild. And, at most of the time when you hire a new head coach, you kind of go in that rebuild process. So I don't know how that will work out. Realistically, though, I don't know. I think retirement, the more you think about it, is a decent possibility for Aaron Rodgers. But it should be very interesting for Rodgers. Like you mentioned, the Bengals ended up defeating the Tennessee Titans 19-16 on Saturday. The Bengals' first road playoff game victory in franchise history. And you look at this game for Cincinnati. The first play of the game, Ryan Tannehill throws the interception to Jesse Bates. I was ecstatic. I thought, we are going to win this game because my, philosophy, heading into this, game and my things about this game was if the Bengals are up 10 points anytime in this game, they've won. You make Ryan Tannehill throw the ball as much as you possibly can. And if the Bengals are up 10 points at any time, they've won the game. And, obviously, throughout the game, Ryan Tannehill, he threw a decent amount. But we're talking about Ryan Tannehill, who heading into this game was horrendous in the playoffs and still is absolutely horrible. Ryan Tannehill heading into this postseason game against Cincinnati in 4 playoff games was averaging 133 passing yards per game. That is unheard of. I mean, that is worse than Andy Dalton in the playoffs. That's how bad that is. And you look at Tannehill, he threw 3 picks this game. I mean, they were in some crucial moments, when in the red zone, there was one. There's also Tennessee's last drive. And, the Bengals were playing good on defense. They were playing out terrific. They had Derrick Henry get less than 4 rushing yards per attempt, forcing 3 turnovers on Tannehill. And then you look at this Bengals offense. This Bengals offense did not play good at all. Let's go ahead, and say that the Bengals offense was horrendous. And we still beat the number 1 seed in the AFC in the road. In Tennessee, Joe Burrow threw for over 300 yards this game. It did not even seem like he threw for over 300 yards. It was insane. He had the interception. I don't think it was a pick. Very debatable, play there. But that was a completely, momentum shifter for, Tennessee. At the previous possession, the Titans made a field goal, and heading into that drive, the Bengals were up 10, which I was very comfortable with because I didn't think this Tennessee team was capable of coming back from a double digit. deficit. They make a field goal, they cut the lead to 7. And then, when Burrow throws that pick, the Titans score the next possession, all of a sudden we're tied. It's starting to get maybe a little bit nervous, for the Bengals. But, we're able to pull through in this game. And it's crazy because you look at Burrow, it is absolutely ridiculous. He throws for over 300. He has I'm not going to say pick because I really don't think that was an interception. But he gets sacked 9 times, and he wins the game on the road without throwing a touchdown. If you were to tell me heading into this game, Joe Burrow is not going to throw a touchdown. He's going to throw a pick, but not a touchdown. He's going to get sacked 9 times. And the Bengals are going to win this game. Even me being a Bengals fan at this point and me feeling pretty confident in my own team, I would have thought you were crazy. I mean, the offensive line was horrendous. And even one of the plays when it was the Bengals were closing in, around the 30 or so on the Tennessee yard line, it was a delay game, but the Bengals were very fortunate because Burrow got sacked that play, but there was actually a delay game call on that. But if that would have been a sack instead of a delay game, he would have got sacked 10 times, and he's still able to pull Cincinnati into a victory, which it's not an easy place to do it. Tennessee, who's the 1 seed, getting Derrick Henry back, a good team. I'm just kind of blown away, and it's just crazy because I thought Cincinnati was going to win this game. And it's one of those realization of it happening. It's like you think they will, but until it actually happens, it's not really going to set in. It's still kind of setting in. We're going to be playing an AFC Championship game on Sunday. It is crazy to me. I know somebody who had the Bengals having 2 wins this season. We had 2 freaking playoff wins this year. I don't get how some people thought we were going to be this bad. Myself, I had us around 8-9 wins. But it is just crazy. And honestly, I mean, this game against Kansas City, it's going to be tough. I think we're capable of beating them, but it should be a great game. I would not be surprised if this Bengals game against Kansas City this Sunday is very similar to the performance and game of the Chiefs and Bills this past weekend.
Absolutely. But you don't want to get into a shootout with the Chiefs now because, you got Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and them boys, but do you really want to get in a shootout with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and Andy Reid? I don't think so. That's playing with fire. So I think you guys have to come in with a solid game plan to beat the Chiefs. And you mentioned Joe Burrow getting sacked 9, should have been 10 times. Are you guys prepared to protect him against Chris Jones and them boys? I mean, Andy Reid can dial up the pressure, and his defense coordinator's damn good at it. So you guys better keep Joe Burrow on his feet, develop a game plan, 1, 2, 3-step drop, ball out of his hands, 3-second timer in his head. You cannot hold onto the ball. You have to get out of your hands. Don't extend the plays. If it's not there, throw it away, come back, and we'll try something. I think run game, you got to establish the run in order to pass. So those are some things you guys have to do. But what a damn game. I mean, Joe Burrow, 348 yards. Honestly, it should have been a pick. I'm shocked that they marked it as a pick. It's one of those things where we know it's not a pick, but in the record books, it is. So, But Ryan Tannehill, what an atrocious game. And you know what's so funny? Everyone's been riding high on this guy. And I said, this is the same guy that was playing on the Dolphins. I'm guaranteeing you this guy will not bring you to the promised land. Number 1 seed, home field advantage, and he blew it again. And this guy is a nobody. He is an average, run-of-the-mill quarterback, journeyman quarterback. He's not a franchise guy. And let me tell you this. I don't know. I got flack for this. I told him. I said, Ryan Tannehill is a bust. And they said, no. Have you seen what he's been doing lately? Oh, this, and this. Well, I'm here to say he is a bust. And you know what? When you look at his stat line, yeah, sure, he had 220 yards, but he had 3 interceptions and a 66.7 passer rating. That is terrible. I mean, this guy has so much clout. For what? What has he done? But shout out to Joe Burrow because that guy has swagger. I like the way he carries himself. I like his cadence. He said that this is the new standard going forward for Cincinnati. And I'm sure you're a fan of hearing that. he said, this is the minimal of our expectations. So you guys are in good hands for the future. I love Joe Burrow. But seriously, you guys have made history. Like you said, 30 years, first time AFC Championship game. I mean, this is wonderful. I mean, God, I don't even think you were alive the last time they made it. No, right?
Yeah, I'm only 21.
Yeah. So, dude, this is like the first time in this like generation where people are actually texting about the Bengals being in the playoffs. Have you seen that? Like, that's pretty cool. Like, it's never been like a thing. Now it is. So, I was rooting for your Bengals. Like, I don't know if you are like this, but you have some teams like you're not a fan, but you just root for them to win. Like, I wanted Bengals to win. I wanted the Bills to win. So, like, I just have like a niche towards certain teams. But yeah, this game was one to remember. You beat the number 1 seed, my friend, as an away team. How does that feel?
But, we beat them, but the job's not finished. We're 2 down. We got 2 to go. I think we're capable of doing it. We've already beat the Chiefs once. To me, heading into this game, the past week game against the Titans, I thought the Titans were – they were a good team, but I thought they were severely overrated. And you mentioned Ryan Tannehill, throwing 3 picks. And I think that's part of the reason, why, Tennessee has had so much success, because they've not had to put pressure on Tannehill. He's just been a game manager. He might have 200 yards and maybe a touchdown, an occasional pick, but he's not having to throw the ball to win them a game. Because when you're a game manager, you're not having to put the team on your back and win it for you. I feel like, this past game, we saw Tannehill, the pressure was on him. They had to put more pressure on him because, Henry was on 100%, had to throw more. And we really saw the true Tannehill, that he cannot lead his team in a big game. But this Cincinnati team, to me, our defense is playing freaking phenomenal right now. 2 playoff games, and we've allowed our opponents under 20 points in both games. Honestly, our offense has played freaking horrible in both games, and we've still won 2 playoff games. Like, to me, that's really something that's encouraging and hopeful as we go into the Chiefs. We've won 2 playoff games, and our offense is looking like one of the worst it has in a 2-game stretch this season. It's interesting because, it's one of those deals. I thought they'd beat the Raiders. I thought they'd beat the Titans. But that it's actually happening is just kind of insane. But, this Chiefs game, it's really interesting because when you look at these weapons with the Chiefs, you have Tyreek Hill, you have Hardman, you have Kelsey. But when you look at us, Mixon hasn't really been able to run the ball, and that's something else. We haven't even been able to run with him, and we're still winning games. But when you have guys like Higgins, Boyd, and Chase, in my opinion, people might call me biased, but as of right now, I don't think it's really up for debate. The best trio of wide receivers in the NFL right now on one team. It's going to be hard for the Chiefs to stop us, but as well because we both put up over 30 points in that amazing game in week 16. But you look at this, game, it's always going to come down to the offensive line. When we played the Chiefs the first game, the first couple of drives, Burrow could not even get the ball out. He was getting sacked so many times. We won that game. Burrow got sacked so many times, and his nameplate fell at the back of his jersey, and he was still able to have an amazing performance, throw for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. To me, if the Bengals offensive line plays like it did this past week against the Titans, I wouldn't be surprised this game is pretty much over by halftime. But I don't get it, because when you look at this Bengals offensive line, there is times where they show much improvement. For example, look at the week before against the Raiders. There's probably about 2-3 plays our offensive line wasn't good. We gave up a couple sacks, but aside from that, it played pretty well. You look at the Bengals, sacks they've given up this season. This is so weird. The only team in the only game they did not give up a sack against was the Steelers. That is insane. I know TJ Watt was out that game, but the fact, their offensive line at times has showed some promise, then other times they just have some duds, and what the heck just happened with them. But to me, this game is going to come down to the offensive line, and whoever gets the ball last, I think, will win this game. Very similar to literally every single game this past weekend. And, that's how it was, with the Bengals put the Chiefs the first meeting. I'm very, very nervous about this game. I think we can beat them. I don't know if we will, but we've done it before. I think we could do it again. I cannot wait for this game. I think this has potential to possibly be a game of the year candidate, just like the Chiefs and Bills game as well.
Absolutely, I 100% agree, and I think you guys have the coach of the year too. That's just my opinion. I know you posted about that as well. So do you want to say your thoughts on that?
I really don't think it's up much for debate anymore. The Bengals are picked to be last in the division. Like I said earlier, somebody had us having 2 wins this year. And, I have not been a fan of Zach Taylor the first 2 years at all. I thought, when you look at their team, having just 6 wins in 2 seasons, that was horrendous. I felt like, being a Bengals fan, you knew we were better than having 6 wins in 2 years. You knew the potential. We had so many good players. You thought we could have been much better. And then we win against the Vikings the first game of the year. We're 1-0. And then the second game happens against the Chicago Bears. And you don't know what happened. The Bengals lost to the Bears. Like, this doesn't make any sense. At that point, I felt like, maybe Taylor, is not going to be the guy for Cincinnati. And then the following a week or two later, we play the Jaguars. And we're down like 20-0 at halftime. We come back and win that game. But it's so crazy because at that point, when the Bengals lost to the Bears, after that game, Zach Taylor was the number 1 coach in the hot seat in the whole NFL. He was the coach most likely to get fired after that game. If the Bengals lost that game against the Jaguars, to me, I was all for Taylor getting fired because that game should have never came down to that because we were the much, much better team. Fast forward a couple months later, we have a couple playoff wins. We look one of the best teams in the league, and I don't think it's even debatable that Zach Taylor isn't, coach of the year. Heading into this week, when we were playing the Titans, most people thought Mike Vrabel was going to be the coach of the year, because he's done a really good job considering the injuries he's had and is still able to have the 1 seed in the AFC. But when you look at the Bengals, who this is Joe Burrow's first full season, this is Jamar Chase's first season. Some of these guys who are new to the Bengals, like Trey Hendrickson, who has 14 sacks in the regular season, been absolutely phenomenal this year. Guys like Mike Hilton and Eli Apple, who are new to the team, who's been, great additions. These guys who are first year playing with each other, and some of these guys who are first, year playing, and you win 10 games and you win 2 playoff games, and you're one of the 4 teams left in the NFL to play, in a conference, championship game. There's only 4 teams left, and you're one of them when nobody had expectations for you this season. Taylor defeating Mike Vrabel this past week, to me, I feel like those were the top 2 people for Coach of the Year. And whoever won that game more than likely should have won Coach of the Year. And the fact that Taylor did not even have, that great a performance coaching, and we were still able to beat Vrabel and the Titans, I don't get how it's even debatable at this point. I mean, it is insane because, first, month of the season, first couple weeks of the season, you thought there was a chance, Zach Taylor is not doing well. Like I already said, there was a decent chance he possibly could have been fired. And now at the end of the season, the Bengals have a chance to be in the Super Bowl, and Zach Taylor is probably going to get Coach of the Year. Jamar Chase is going to get Rookie of the Year. Burrow is going to get Comeback Player of the Year. If Burrow balls out in the next 2 games, like he did against the Ravens and Chiefs, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, I think he could be MVP. We're in talks of being the Super Bowl. This is all happening so fast. It does not seem real right now because at the beginning of the year, we looked good, but just inconsistency. And if we can just find that consistency on offense and defense, I honestly think we are going to be unstoppable because we're still winning games when our defense is playing good, when our offense is playing bad. When our offense is playing good, when our defense is playing bad, we're still winning. But when you put those 2 together, I think we could honestly be the best team in the league right now. And I think we have a realistic shot of beating the Chiefs if we can just put it all together this week. And honestly, I just don't get how, Taylor cannot win Coach of the Year. And it's crazy to me because I never thought, heading into toward the end of the season that we would be, put in this situation.
Well, kudos to you guys. It always seems that in the beginning of the year, bettors in Vegas always have one team that we all agree on. Okay, well, it's going to be Tampa Bay this year. And they're out, right? I don't think anyone had the Bengals in the NFC or AFC Championship game. No one had them in the AFC Championship game playing the Chiefs. You would have asked a million other people. They would have said tight ends or, one of those like high key or marquee names, right? But for you guys to overcome the odds, this is like, you guys are like the Cleveland Cavaliers. Basically, you guys have good players, but no one really, everyone counted you out. No one had you guys in the championship. And now you guys are in the AFC Championship game playing to go to LA. I mean, my goodness. And like you said, Joe Burrow, you can make a case even for MVP considering Aaron Rodgers' meltdown. And Aaron Rodgers isn't too hot with the voters. I mean, he has some vendettas in the media. So I'm sure Aaron Rodgers lost a lot of votes. I guarantee you he lost a lot of votes. So now it's wide open. We don't know who might. The running back for the Colts might win. I mean, Joe Burrow might win. I guarantee. I mean, Rodgers could still win. I mean, you got to look at that. I mean, his stat line is incredible. Only, you got those 4 picks. But, I mean, who do you think is going to win MVP? I think it might be Joe Burrow. It could be the running back for the Colts. But it's a wide open race now because Rodgers blew it. Because if he won that game against the 49ers and he was advancing to the NFC Championship game, it'd be in the bag. It would be Aaron Rodgers' back-to-back MVPs, 4 MVPs in his career. Now, I don't know. I can't say that with confidence, man. And it's sad to say, but, even looking at the Buccaneers game, I thought it was going to be a blowout. I mean, the Rams were just torching them. And then all of a sudden, Brady and them boys start marching up the field. And it kind of reminded me of, like, what happened in Dallas. It's like Dak Prescott and the Cowboys marching up the field just too late. Too little, too late. Like, you guys are in the hole, too far to come back. But, I mean, 30-27, I mean, Brady made it a game. So that's one of these things. It's like you can have, like, a 21-point lead, and it could be gone like that.
And when you play, those type of teams who have a high-powered offense like a Rams team or the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, pretty much all these teams that we, have seen this past week, in the playoffs, pretty much aside from the Titans and the 49ers, you could be up 21-0. By the end of the quarter, you could be losing, basically what you're saying. And, like, the Rams-Buccaneers game was crazy to me because I thought the Buccaneers would win because they had home field advantage. And you look at this Rams team, I just thought, Matthew Stafford, I think he's good. I think he's underrated. Heading into the season, he was my MVP candidate, my MVP winner. But he's been inconsistent at times. And to me, when you look at, teams who win games, 9 times out of 10, the winner of the game has the better quarterback. And that's a perfect example of the Bengals game. The Bengals, it wasn't pretty, but we got it done, and Burrow was a much better quarterback. I will say, look at the Packers 49ers game. That was one of the few examples where the opposing team who lost, the quarterback was better than the winner. But when you look at this Rams Buccaneers, it was just crazy to me because I thought Brady was going to, deliver. I know there's been some injuries on offense, but, Stafford really picked it up. Cooper Kupp was phenomenal. I think he deserves more consideration for MVP. No wide receiver has ever won an MVP this season, ever in the NFL. No wide receiver has ever won the MVP award. Kind of surprising to me, but I think Kupp needs some more, talk because, he basically has like the triple crown, most receptions, most receiving yards, and, most touchdowns for any player this season. Then you look at guys, what if Matthew Stafford, what if they, go to the Super Bowl and win, who knows there? It's interesting because you don't know who the MVP candidate is, MVP frontrunner is as of right now because, the Rodgers dud. But, this Buccaneers game, it's shocking because, with these, the Buccaneers losing and the Packers losing, we've already kind of talked about, the possibility there's a chance that Aaron Rodgers could retire instead of just, playing for another team. There's been reports past couple of days, there's a much better chance than I think people realized, maybe a couple weeks ago that Tom Brady could possibly retire, in the offseason. In my opinion, I know there's lots of talk, he might not play next year, and stuff like that. I just don't see Brady retiring until he won. If he wins the Super Bowl next year, he's retiring. I just do not see him leaving on a bad note to end his career. And I know, like we've talked about with Aaron Rodgers, retire on top, when you just won a Super Bowl. I don't think Brady has to do that because he's won so many. I mean, winning seven Super Bowls is insane. I don't think it's, have to, continue to play until you win a Super Bowl and then retire. But I just feel like that's the way Tom Brady is. You look at him; he's one of the most competitive people in the NFL. All the coaches or the players have said it. He's his competitiveness to win. He is whatever it takes to win. He always wants to win. And when the Patriots lost to the Titans his last game with the Patriots, there was talks maybe he's going to retire. Who knows what's next? It's probably going to be the end of him with the Patriots. And then, he shrugs everybody and goes to the Buccaneers. Like, that makes no sense at all. And then, he won Super Bowl the first season. So to me, I know there's lots of talks of Brady possibly retiring. To me, it's also one of those deals like you just don't believe it until it actually happens. But I think he's going to play next season. And if he wins Super Bowl, I feel very confident that'll be his last season. But when you look at this offseason, last couple of off seasons have been insane. If you were to tell me 10 years ago that Tom Brady's going to play for the Buccaneers, I would have thought you were like on drugs or something like that. It's just ridiculous. Then the next season, there's a chance that could be, one of Aaron Rodgers' last season with the Packers. And it's crazy because there's a situation now where we could see Aaron Rodgers retire, possibly Tom Brady retire. And I just got an alert on my phone like 10 minutes ago that Sean Payton's stepping down as the Saints coach. That is crazy. I mean, we're talking about the two best quarterbacks the past decade, one of the better coaches in the NFL the past decade, all leaving the same offseason. I think of Brady at this point. I feel like that kind of might also have to do with Brady's decision now because at the Saints, they were playing pretty good up until Jameis Winston got hurt. And, I know there was talks of possibly, the Saints getting a guy like Rodgers or Derek Carr, and the Saints possibly could be a playoff contender. And, that's that one team that, Brady could just not get over the hump against ever since he's been with the Buccaneers. So possibly, with Sean Payton now stepping down, just coming out past half hour ago, maybe that also has to play an effect with Brady's decision to continue to play next season. It should be very interesting. It's kind of weird, though, because you did not think you'd be having conversations just 2 weeks ago that Sean Payton is stepping down, Brady could possibly retire, and Rodgers could possibly retire. All three of them without winning a ring to end their seasons.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at it. Obviously, they're all going through different situations in life too. Rodgers, I think it's more of, can I get it done in Green Bay? It's more of the question, am I a failure in playoffs? I mean, obviously, he had that one miraculous run. And here's my thing. I think it's a disadvantage to have home field. And I think it's a disadvantage to have a bye week because you get stagnated. You don't have the momentum as a team that's on the road, that wins a wild card game, goes to the divisional round, wins a game on the road, and then goes to the championship game and wins another game on the road. Like the momentum, that's what the momentum the Packers had. When they went to Atlanta, when they went to Chicago, and they, went to the Super Bowl. That's one of those things where they had the underdog vibe. They had we have nothing to lose. But now when you're in the number one seed, you have everything to lose. You have home field to lose. You have the number one seed to lose. So I think it was a mistake, maybe getting number one seed. I know that it's great to have it come through Lambeau, but we're not invincible at Lambeau. Like, we've seen the Packers lose at Lambeau. So, for me, I think home field advantage is just one of those things where it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But going back to Brady, his decision on retirement is completely different than Rodgers. It's not a legacy decision, or it's not about, I'm self-conscious about my playoff records. Now it's about, what does Giselle want? What do my kids want? Because I think Brady, at this point of his life, he's not living for himself anymore. I think now he's looking at his family. He's saying, okay, well, what do you guys want? Do you want dad to go on the field and play? Do you want me to be, the ultimate super dad and just be there for you guys? Like, you got to remember his kids are about to be at the age where they're going to be doing sporting events. They're going to be doing their life. So maybe Brady wants to say, hey, 7, like that is insane. I won with 2 different teams. I brought Gronkowski with me out of retirement to win a Super Bowl. Like, he has done everything. And, like, you think about it, what else does he have to accomplish? What else does he have to prove? Like, he is the GOAT. I'll admit it. I give it up. Like, I mean, yeah, I will say Aaron Rodgers is a more talented quarterback, but for accomplishment-wise, yeah, Brady's the fucking GOAT. Better than Montana. I was holding on to the argument, oh, Montana's better. He's not better. Brady's the GOAT. But when you look at it, I think the decision is not going to come. I don't think Brady's really going to say, oh, Sean Payton retired. Now here's my chance. That even when Sean Payton was there, he was whooping his ass. So I don't think he really cares. I think he's more about, does my family want me around on Sunday mornings? So, do they want me there for Sunday dinners? Do they want me, I think that plays more of a factor. And who knows, maybe his sons play a factor, or, his wife, and say, hey, babe, I don't want you to get hit out there anymore. You have all the money in the world. What more do you need? What are you chasing? Like, I think Tom Brady's a madman. Like, I think he has, like, mentally, like, he has, like, something, like, he has a mission, like, to just freaking run over and dominate. And like, this guy is a madman. But I love that about Tom Brady. Like, I think Skip Bayless calls him Psycho Tom when he's running down the sidelines screaming and yelling, and that's what I love about him. He's the ultimate competitor. I wish Aaron Rodgers was more like that. I really do. He's not like that, but I just think with Sean Payton retiring too, I think he's just done. Like, I just think he's at the point in his life where he's just done coaching. It's a lot. It's taxing on you, and Drew Brees is retired. I think that has a lot to do with it too. And I think the outcome of the season is the reason why Sean Payton retired. So you look at all these 3 guys, they all have 3 different reasons of, well, Sean Payton has retired, but you look at Brady and Rodgers now, they have a lot of contemplating to do. And I think, like I said earlier, you look at guys, I'm going to name a handful of guys that have retired. You look at Phillip Rivers, Tony Romo, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning. The funny part is, what Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers have in common, they're friends with all of those guys. So I guarantee you, phone calls have been made and conversations have been and will have certain impact on Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers' futures going forward, because those guys, they hold a lot of, respect, towards them, and they're definitely going to take their words, and run with it. So I think, for example, Drew Brees tells Tom Brady, hey, man, I when I retired, and, Drew Brees is the ultimate family guy. And he says, hey, I've been spending the most time with my kids, my wife. It's great. And I'm sure Brady's going to take that into account and say, hey, look at Drew, successful man. He's, on broadcast. He's doing this. Rodgers has Jeopardy. He has Shailene Woodley. He has a future in acting if he wants it. The sky's limitless. And then we look at some guys like Russell Wilson. He might retire, dude. Like, seriously. Look at Russell Wilson. We have talks about him leaving Seattle and going to a different team. Who knows? What if he just says, what if he retires? I mean, what if he goes into acting? What if he goes, Russell Wilson's a good-looking guy. He has so many opportunities. He could go into modeling. He could do this. He could do that. You look at, that's the thing. That's what I like about the NFL. You got to think about life after football, because football's not forever, right? So that's why I like to see Megatron and what he's doing. And, you look at guys like Ryan Shazier. Unfortunately, he had a career-ending injury. My God, he was paralyzed. For him to even walk down the aisle with his newly wedded wife, it's a miracle because he lost basically feeling in his legs, getting paralyzed on that hit, and he's trying to hit people. People aren't trying to hit him. So for Ryan Shazier to go through that and recover, and unfortunately his career is over, but I'm sure, if you're a player, you look at situations like Teddy Bridgewater almost, got a leg amputated because he had a non-contact injury in Minnesota. I mean, I'm sure you got to look at those things and say, my God, how lucky am I that nothing, you've never encountered anything like that. So for me, if I'm Aaron Rodgers and I'm Tom Brady, I'm comfortable with retiring and passing the torch down to the next generation, Josh Allen's, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and say, here you guys go, run with the torch. Because that's honestly, I think it's time. It's time for this generation to call it. Because I don't know. I don't have the same feeling. Like, I'm 21, you're 21. So, I mean, we're getting older now. So, I mean, like, I was 8 years old, 10 years old when Aaron Rodgers took over for the Packers, So, like, it's been a decade, and I've seen them win a Super Bowl, and I've seen them go through their playoff woes. So, I'm just, like, at this point, it's sad, but we're coming down to, wow, I never thought this day would, come, but retirement is definitely going to happen sooner or later. He's not going to be a Packer forever. We're going to have a predecessor to Rodgers. So, it just always happens. It's just, good things have to come to an end.
It's crazy because, talking about Rodgers possibly retiring, Brady possibly retiring, not to mention, Roethlisberger has already announced he's retiring. So you look at these three quarterbacks who, these three quarterbacks are for sure going to be future Hall of Famers. All three of them are going to be more likely first ballot Hall of Famers. Rodgers and Brady definitely more likely, Roethlisberger as well. But you look at Brady, what he's had to go through the past couple of years. The awkward transition of going to Tampa Bay with a new head coach that's not Bill Belichick, learning a brand new offense, being older than his offense coordinator. Offense coordinator currently is Byron Leftwich, who is significantly younger than Tom Brady. That's just kind of strange. Look at all the things he's had to deal with, trying to get, Gronkowski to come out of retirement. You look at this past year, the whole Antonio Brown debacle. That is just, to me, I feel like, you mentioned him, his wife and his kids want him to retire, spend time with his family. But you look at, like, his competitiveness to win, but you also want to spend time with your family, and just, like, you're mentally exhausted. I mean, when you're constantly around the guy like Antonio Brown, he's, offered Antonio Brown to stay at his house, and then you go, the crap that Antonio Brown's done. I mean, just the other day, he said of all the quarterbacks he wants to play with in the NFL, he wants to play with Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's probably the stupidest thing he's ever said, with interviews and stuff like that. That's when he's messed up, is when all the quarterbacks he wants to play with is Lamar Jackson. But, with Brady, it's just like, I could kind of see him playing maybe one more year to try to get one more ring, just because how competitive he is. He doesn't need to prove anything because he already is the GOAT. Everybody knows he is. It's one of those deals. It's like when you're younger, you hear people talk about, oh, he's going to play forever, and he's the face of face of the NFL and stuff like that. And then you look at LeBron and how long he's played for. The longevity of Tom Brady and LeBron, it is surreal, and it's insane because I feel like those two players specifically, once those two players retire, just the sport in general is just going to be completely different. Like you're not going to see a Brady on you're not going to wake up on a Sunday morning and you're not going to be hearing Tom Brady how many yards he's going to throw for. You're not, on basketball, you're not going to be seeing LeBron in the finals anymore. And it's crazy because it's like this new generation, like you're talking about. When you have guys like a Josh Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert, I would say the core. When you look at the young, talented quarterbacks in the NFL, I would say that's your Fantastic Four or your core four. Those four guys are going to be carrying the face of the NFL for the next 10 to 15 years. And the transition of it is just going to be so awkward, like knowing that, these guys are going to be the next, Breeze, Brady, Rodgers, Roethlisberger, Manning, those type of guys. And it's just weird. You were saying we're the same age. It's kind of like your childhood's coming to an end. I know the childhood's over with, but it's just like the things when you were little, it's like the things you would always watch. And it's like, this is just like, obviously you're an adult, but it's like at the same time, it's just weird because it's like that those moments when you had when you're those memories when you had when you're a little kid, and those moments, you're not going to have those again because those guys are retired. It's just kind of it's kind of weird. I just it doesn't seem real. Like once Tom Brady retires from the NFL will never ever be the same again.
You were mentioning that, and what first came to mind was WWE, right? I grew up in the PG era, so it was when they transitioned. You know, Jeff Hardy, Rey Mysterio, Edge, John Cena, Kane, Undertaker. Like, dude, like that's not around anymore. Like, yeah, some of those guys still do it, but like, you know, that feeling, that moment, that like it's gone, but it's there. It's like I sometimes I go back and I'll watch an episode of Raw from like 2009. You know, I'd watch Raw the night before school, and I was in like 5th grade, and I'll just go back and I'll just be like, wow, like that moment, like it's just in history, ingrained in history forever, set in stone, and it's beautiful to go back and watch it. And I went back and I watched the Packers versus the Steelers in Super Bowl 45. It feels like yesterday, but it was a decade ago. Like, I remember watching it. I remember having my Packers cheese head on, my Rodgers jersey. I remember it. I still have. Hold on. I'm going to grab it real quick.
And you know, with the WWE and wrestling, it's like, you know, those guys who don't retire, you know, the NFL.
So this is, I just thought I'd show this. This is the Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl 45 Green Bay Packer jersey. You know how it's OG when it's Reebok, man. Like, this is like OG, man. And so, like, I remember 10 years ago, like, this is like, you will never get these moments back. Like, I remember, like, Reebok uniforms, like, you know, like, it's just like that time, that, like, experience is gone forever. And it's weird, right? So it's like when you said childhood is coming to an end, like, I'm like grasping onto time. Like, I don't want to grow old, man. No.
And it's like you look at it, and it's so crazy because, you know, mentioning the WWE, it's like 2016, 2016, 2016, and 17 were my favorite years. And it's like you go back, and it was just amazing. And it's like you look back just 4 or 5 years ago, some of the guys who are no longer maybe with them or not nearly as much. For instance, when you look at guys in the WWE or just AEW or different wrestling promotions, you see guys who are, you know, they're at the peak of their career. They're getting up there in age, but they continue to maybe have an occasional wrestling match, and they continue to maybe have storylines and feuds. And to me, I think that's very, you know, similar to some of these guys in the NFL, and I think that's what the exact opposite of what the NFL should do. Because when you have guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, you need to you should retire when it feels right and when you're at the peak of your career. You don't want to just, you know, keep on playing and struggling. And Rodgers never getting that Super Bowl. Because when you have guys, I'm just saying, when you look at somebody like the Undertaker, who has had the occasional maybe one match a year for the past 3 or 4 years, and then it's like, obviously he's one of the most popular, you know, wrestlers of all time. But at the same time, to me, I feel like a part of those with those matches and unnecessary storylines, I feel like that's kind of hurt his legacy. To me, my all-time favorite wrestler is Jericho. And, you know, several months ago at AEW's, you know, pay-per-view, it was Jericho and MJF. If MJF won, Jericho was going to retire. I was so distraught. I called this from a mile away. As soon as that storyline happened, like over half a year ago, it was evident that was going to be the plans. And it was built up so perfectly that MJF is going to retire Chris Jericho, because MJF is one of the best heels in professional wrestling, one of the best bad guys. And for whatever reason, AEW had Jericho beat MJF. And to me, that doesn't make any sense, because you could just really tell, like, when AEW started, Chris Jericho was the guy, because, you know, he's just coming off New Japan. He's, you know, recently coming off WWE with him and Kevin Owens. That was terrific. But, you know, after that, you know, Jericho lost the title to Jon Moxley around 2 years ago, around this time. To me, I think he's kind of hurt his I think he's kind of hurt his legacy by continuing to wrestle and be with AEW. And that's something I've never really talked about on the show. I've been meaning to different ways. But when you look at a guy like Chris Jericho, in my opinion, there's lots of, different people who say the greatest of all time is in wrestling. Maybe it's The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Cena, The Rock, Steve Austin. In my opinion, I think it's Jericho. I know it's definitely up for debate. But when you look at a guy like Jericho, who just has not been in the same he has not been himself the last 2 years, just wrestling, storyline wise and feud wise, and you have an opportunity to retire him, it makes perfect sense. The storyline was there, and they don't do it. And now at this point, ever since the MJF feud was over with Jericho, it just feels like all Jericho's feuds are just complete crap. He's still good on the mic, but I don't think he's as good as what he used to be. And it's that point, it's like kind of like we've talked about just a couple of weeks ago with Rodgers. Retire at the peak of your career so you can have your legacy on top. You don't want people to have bad moments or bad. You don't want people to make you look bad at you towards the end of your career if you're struggling. You retire on top so people can't talk bad about your legacy if it goes south after the peak of your career. I think that's definitely what AEW should have done with Jericho and MJF. I know I'm getting off track here, but I think that's a very similar situation when you have guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, similar to just Chris Jericho. Don't let your ego get in the way. Retire what's best for you. Retire when it's best decision instead of keep on playing and just kind of, I don't want to say tarnishing your legacy by continuing to do something that you cannot do nearly as good as what you used to do in the peak of your career. But I guess that's what I'm basically kind of saying. But I think that's very, similar kind of what these NFL quarterbacks, and nowadays of the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last game we have to cover is the Bills versus Chiefs game. And I could not take my eyes off of that, man. That was one hell of a game. It was an offensive shootout. Mahomes, 378 passing yards. Holy cow. 3 touchdowns and 123.1 rating. Josh Allen had one hell of a game too. 329. He had 4 touchdowns to 1 receiver, and that receiver did break the receiving touchdowns NFL playoff record. 4 touchdowns for Gabriel Davis there. But Josh Allen had 136 passer rating. So these guys had some of the best playoff games in history. It was a shootout. And unfortunately, the NFL rules prevented us from seeing even a better game. Like we could have had, we could have had an even better game than we had if the NFL rules weren't one and done.
So do you think the NFL rules should be changed similar to college football then?
Yeah, I think it should, because it would be a better product. It would just enhance the game and the quality, because I think we were shortchanged on that one there. I mean, I think a lot of the times when teams call for rule changes, they're on the short end of the stick, So just like that one pass interference call, you know what I mean? So there's certain things in playoffs when, okay, well, there's controversy. The team that usually gets the shit end of the stick complains about it and tries to get something to be done. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if the NFL doesn't do anything about it. But I mean, you think about it. The team who basically wins the coin toss and receives, and if they score a touchdown, it's over. What you could say is, hey, why don't you stop them on defense, and then you could give your offense a chance, right? But it's hard to say that when you're trying to stop Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. So when I saw that the Chiefs won the coin toss, when Buffalo called tails and it was heads, I was like, it's over. I was like, the Chiefs win. I already knew. I was like, Travis Kelce's going to get a touchdown. But I just think it was one of the greatest games I've watched, NFL playoff games I've watched, for sure.
And it's like you look at these games, I feel like this was probably the best weekend of NFL playoffs of all time, just because every single one of these games went down to literally the wire. All the final plays of the game is when the team won. And you look at this Bills Chiefs game, definitely I would say game of the year. Chiefs went 42-36, And it's like the Bills score a touchdown with 13 seconds left, and they've probably won it. But then you realize, I mean, this is the Chiefs' offense we're talking about here. They need 13 seconds, and they're able to get a score to make it go to overtime. This was an amazing game, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like the overtime rules need to be changed. I know it's been something that fans have wanted for years, but I feel like instead of having the college football way, how you start off on the opponent 25 and work your way up, and then after a couple overtimes they have that new crappy rule where like you start going for two. I don't really agree with that. I think it should just constantly start off at the opponent's 25-yard line. I would say maybe just have a regular, game. Like if the first team scores a touchdown, the other team has a chance to score a touchdown as well. And then basically it's kind of like college football, but just you don't start off at the same yard line. I would say just have like normal kickoffs and everything like that, and just like if the first team scores a touchdown, the second team scores. But if the first team they get the ball back and they don't score, all that team needs is a field goal or a touchdown. But just I agree that the NFL, needs an overtime rule change. I think it's very similar to college football. What I wish it would be. Just I wish where they would start the ball off. Like I wish they would just kind of have a regular kickoff instead of having after your opponent 25-yard line. Because to me, I kind of feel like that's not a given, but I feel like that's a very much more handout, basically, kind of similar to how we've seen in baseball the past year or two. I believe once against in the 10th inning or something like that. Like they start off at second base to try to speed up the game, speed up the pace of the game to not make it quite as long. But it's interesting, with these NFL overtime rules, and this game with the Bills and Chiefs was absolutely phenomenal. I don't get how you could possibly get a better game than this. Two some of the best quarterbacks in the league, dueling it out this past weekend. And all these games. I mean, you look at this Bengals Titans game, 19-16. The Bengals, defeat the Titans. The Titans are the number one seed. Win on the road. Their first, win in franchise history on the road. You look at the Packers. They get upset, and at home field, against San Francisco, a team who not many people had expectations for heading into those postseasons, and all of a sudden they beat two pretty good teams in the Cowboys and the Packers. You look at the Rams. They come into Tampa Bay and they shock Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. And now there's questions up in the air about possibly could that would have been Tom Brady's last game ever. It's just crazy. And now we have some very nice games. On the AFC and NFC Championship games. There is the Bengals against the Chiefs in Arrowhead. The first game on Sunday. And the second game is the 49ers taking on the Rams. Both of those games should be good games. And the Rams, they're very fortunate because not only do they have this playoff game in their home stadium, but if they end up beating the 49ers, they get to play the Super Bowl in their home stadium. It's very interesting because no team has ever won no team has ever won a Super Bowl in their home stadium until last year in Tampa Bay. So there's a chance that could be never happen, and then we could see that back-to-back years of that happening. So it's going to be very interesting to see, some of these, outcomes, with the Bengals and Chiefs, and then we have the Rams and the 49ers this Sunday, and should be some great games. We've really covered, a ton of stuff. What's next for Rodgers, the Packers, 49ers outcome, the Rams and Buccaneers game. What's next for Tom Brady? Is there a chance we could possibly see the last of Brady and Rodgers? The Chiefs, defeat Buffalo, an absolute overtime thriller. Should the NFL change their overtime rules? The Bengals defeat the Titans to be in the AFC Championship game. That still just kind of seems crazy to say. And lots of other stuff as well. So, Tony, can you kind of tell some of the listeners we can check you out on social media and everything?
Absolutely. So, my YouTube has not been active for a while. I've just been slacking, point blank period. I think I want to do different things on YouTube. I want to definitely try out gaming. When I have my whole setup, I think that's going to be in the next couple of months when I move into a townhouse with my friends. Right now I'm in an apartment, so we'll make it happen soon. But it's still Tony G TV. You can find me on YouTube there. Please subscribe. It helps the algorithm. Like, comment, subscribe. But on YouTube, I'm definitely going to be back and grinding going forward. So be on the lookout for that. I'll let you guys know. But Instagram, my sports Instagram got deleted. I'm sure I've mentioned it a couple times now, but I get asked about it all the time. They're like, what happened to your sports Instagram? I'm like, fucking Instagram deleted it, man. I'm pretty sure it's my fault because I was pretty sloppy with the copyright claims and stuff. So they got me on that. But anyways, my Instagram is Antonio W. Gazza. That's my main. I post some of the edits, Jordan, and I have on there. I post my life on there, so go check it out. Don't use Twitter. Don't use any other social media. So that's where you can find me. It's always a pleasure for Jordan having me on. Like, he doesn't have to have me on his show, but he hits me up, and he's so awesome and genuine. So I'm like, fuck yeah, man. And like, I would love to be on your show. So I always appreciate it. And like I said, when I get my stuff together, my show, I need to figure out a logo. I need all that stuff figured out. Like, I've been slacking, so my apologies. But once I have everything figured out, I'm gonna have a consistent guest on, so I'll definitely have you on a lot. But it's always a pleasure, my friend, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to have me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you for joining and everything, and really, excited to see some of your content. Once that it's released. I've seen some of your stuff, your posts and stuff like that. Some of your videos that you previously did. Some very nice content there. That really kind of about does it. Make sure to go check him out. I'll put the links in the description below. Make sure to follow me, the Sports Dude Hines Show on Instagram, Dude Hines Show on Twitter. If you're new to the channel, or if you've been here before, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I would really, really appreciate it. That does it for this video, and I will see you all next time on the Sports Dude Hines Show.